Hello, everybody. Um, Giving a lecture today for the first lesson on D-Day. Um, so you can follow along with me with the slides, what you're accustomed to. All right. So the important thing to know about D-Day, as we talked about in the last lecture, just before we got the news of a three-week break, we talk about Northern Africa and how America, when we first entered the war, we helped the British in the campaign in Northern Africa, led to several battles, Patton, Montgomery, against Erwin Rommel. All the tank battles that occurred. Um, so the big plan all along was to invade France. But obviously they had to wait a little bit until America kind of got more mobilized, trained some of the soldiers, etc. So here's the thing: Hitler knew that the United States and Great Britain were going to invade France at some point. The matter is where. So you see my cursor here. This is 1,000 miles from this northern part up here, northeastern part, all the way into here. So it came down to where were we going to invade at? Now, logical thinking, if you look at the map here, so here's English Channel. All the allies were located here in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, same thing. Um, Now, where? So Hitler believed this was going to be the location, right where my cursor is fixated on. Now, why? Well, think of the distance. From here to there is the shortest distance. So, and there were also some other reasons too. Remember before we talked about General Patton, about how he got in trouble for punching a soldier in the face and how he was placed in charge of a fake army? Well, that fake army was located right here. And what's interesting and kind of cool about it is that the United States Army teamed up with Hollywood, and they made blow up air bases, blow up planes out of balloons, tanks out of balloons, um, you name it, out of balloons. This big, massive set. Now, they let the Nazis, the Luftwaffe, fly over this area, and they saw this base. And what was also kind of cool about it, too, is that the British were able to flip German spies. They flipped them onto our side. So they were going back and reporting to Hitler saying that George Patton, which he was stationed in this area, and this is where the Allies are planning the attack from. So Hitler had good reason to believe that this was going to be the staging point, and this would be the area here that they would attack. Lo and behold, that was all part of the plan. It was all fake. It was all a ruse to get Hitler to believe that's what he was going to do. It ended up being right here, Normandy Beach. This is where the invasion ended up happening, and a big part of it was secret. That was the whole point of it, was to keep it as secret as possible, have Hitler believe this was going to be the area where he beefed up most of his defenses, and then really hit this area hard. Now, this attack was a two-pronged attack. The plan was to attack early in the morning on June 6, 1944. So as you guys will see in Band of Brothers, I can highly recommend during this break, if you have the opportunity to watch Band of Brothers, please watch it. It is outstanding. But what you'll see in Band of Brothers is that at midnight, the paratroopers, they go behind enemy lines. They fall in the darkness of the sky, and they are dropped behind Normandy, and their job is to blow up the roads, the bridges, the railroads, you name it, blow it all up. So that way, when the Germans realize that Normandy is the location right here, that Hitler's going to send in more reinforcements. And if you blow up the roads, you blow up the bridges, you can't do that. So then at 6 a.m., you have the actual frontal assault as you land on the beaches and you make your way in. So again, the midnight was the paratroopers, 6 a.m. was the actual invasion process. So D-Day was launched from Great Britain, crossed the English Channel, and invade northern France into Normandy. Now, it was all about weather, too. Weather was a big factor. To make this plan work, you needed certain weather conditions, certain times of the month. You need to have to be a full moon for the paratroopers so they could see. They were also calling for really bad storms along the English Channel. The English Channel is really rough, guys. Very, very, very rough seas. So there were bad storms in early June, and the Germans believed there was no chance. Their weather forecasters and weathermen were predicting it was impossible to launch an invasion during that time. There was the regular invasion was supposed to happen on June 5th, 1944. They had to cancel to June 6th. And Hitler and the Nazis believed that there was no chance. So actually, Hitler sent many of his men on vacation. Erwin Rommel was sent home to see his wife for a little bit of time. But there was a little break in the storm. The Allied forces, their weathermen, saw a little break, and they had it for June 6th. So really catching them off guard was really key. All right, so here's an iconic picture of D-Day, of the Higgins boats, as you can see, going into Normandy. Now, in the background up here, what made Normandy? Now, the United States, they were in charge of something called Omaha Beach. It's all part of Normandy, but they had code names set up. So, Omaha Beach was the most dangerous of all the beaches and sectors of Normandy because the cliffs were the highest. So the Germans were on top of the cliff, so they had a aerial advantage to look down the beaches. It was very, very tough to chart the beaches, make it through, because of the advantage that the Germans had there. So, as you'll see in a minute, the Germans had obstacles all throughout the water. The goal of the Germans was to keep the Americans in the water for as long as possible. So as you'll see, they had mines, they had a bunch of stuff that was set up to stop the boats in the water, to make the men swim or run in the water. Which will be very devastating for our soldiers. Most of the deaths that occur at D-Day happen at Omaha Beach, where the Americans were. All right, so some background. So here's the Nazi occupation of France since June of 1940, as we talked about. So this is about 4 years to plan this thing. Americans entered the war in 1941, and obviously we have some things going on in the Pacific. We have some things going on in Europe, Northern Africa. But we need more time to mobilize our troops. So that's why, going back to the Africa unit, as we talked about, there was some argument about when to do it, 1943, 1944. We ended up by 1944. And if it's up to Joseph Stalin, as we talked about, Stalin got very impatient with the Americans and the British because it took us a long time to finally open up that Western Front. So remember Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. He was a German commander that was in Northern Africa. So when they lost, he was then placed in charge of the defenses in Northern Africa. So basically keeping the Allies out of France. So there was something that they built, something called the Atlantic Wall. Vocabulary term, you need to know that. It's about 2,400 miles long, all along the northern coast of France. As I said, they kept like landmines in the water, different structures. I'll show you some pictures here in a minute. But it took a lot of time to build. They put concrete bunkers on top of the cliffs, so it was a big obstacle again to try to keep the Americans, to keep the British in the water for as long as possible. Now the planner of D-Day was Dwight Eisenhower, General Eisenhower. He's kind of at this time he's kind of an unknown. Even the British, Churchill, Montgomery, we didn't know a whole lot about him. Kind of questioned FDR. Why would you choose him to lead arguably the most important mission ever in the history of the world. But he will later become president of the United States in the 1950s, war hero. So he will be the person in charge of leading this assault. All right, so the operation, this is called Operation Overlord, D-Day, the invasion of France. So when? June 6, 1944. Where was this attacked? The Normandy beaches. But again, keep in mind they launched the invasion from Great Britain, crossed the English Channel, and then invaded Normandy. Who was a part of the Allied forces? You have U.S. forces, you have Canadian forces, and British forces were all a part of this mission. And the goal of this was to invade France, liberate France from Nazi rule. This is the largest attack known to man, the amphibious attack, meaning that you crossing water and invading somewhere from water. 5,000 ships, 11,000 planes, 106,000 troops. So this took a great amount of coordination in order to do this. So the how I already mentioned that. Started off Great Britain, crossing the Channel into France, and they had to cross through the Atlantic Wall. Again, this was very, very important because this is in order to win World War II, you had to liberate France. You had to open up that Western Front to bring relief to the Soviets. And then, think of that sandwich. You have over on this side, this side right here, you have Britain and the United States. In the middle, you have Germany, and on this side, you have the Soviet Union. So the goal is to start shrinking and start regaining all that lost territory that they once lost. So you see that here's the Atlantic Wall right here. So, obviously the water would be up to here, but here's like some of the Belgian gates that were up to stop the boats. You had teller mines, you had ramps, you had hedgehogs, and at Omaha you had the cliffs. So you had these barbed wires on the bottom of the cliffs. Again, slow down the assault. That was the goal of the Germans. If you can keep them on the beach or in the water for as long as possible, the longer they're exposed. So that's why the death totals are going to be devastating for the Allied forces here. Another picture of it, kind of seeing here's the Germans up in their concrete bunkers, and here's some of the hedgehogs that are out in the water. So again, showcasing you more of a zoomed in view. The paratroopers you see right here landed right in this area over here, blowing up all the bridges, blowing up the roads, to keep the Americans, or to keep the Germans from, bringing in reinforcements. And then here's the frontal charge. So as I said before, airborne assault began at midnight. Paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines to hinder a counterattack. There were about 20,000 total that were a part of this. Again, their goal was to take or destroy bridges, road crossings. Now, this was, again, things didn't go according to plan. The weather wasn't the most ideal. It was dark, dropping at midnight. It was windy. A lot of the men that dropped didn't hit their targets. It basically turned into mad chaos on the ground. Men weren't where they were supposed to be. However, a lot of them, several of the things, several of the platoons met their objectives by doing what they needed to do by blowing up the roads and stuff. But it was extremely chaotic on the ground once they dropped. But overall, it was a pretty good success. All right. So again, I can't emphasize this enough. D-Day was arguably the biggest mission in the history of the world. Think about what was at stake. You have Hitler killing millions of Jews. In order for this war to be successful, we needed to bring relief to the Soviets on the Eastern Front. We had to. We had to spread Hitler's, men even more than what they were. And the big key was getting past the beaches. If you got past the beaches, then you were good. And Hitler didn't want us to get past the beaches. So that's why he put all that effort into the Atlantic Wall. So without doing that, we wouldn't have liberated all those concentration camps. More Jews would have died in the Holocaust. And obviously the world would be a lot different today if we weren't able to be successful on that. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions, and yeah, this is it for the lecture. So make sure you have all this stuff down. There'll be an exit ticket for you guys to finish.